Defying the governor's orders, armed protesters stormed the Michigan Capitol again. Hunger in America. With unemployment on the rise, millions are suffering from food insecurity. The latest efforts to get food to those in need. A whistleblower's warning claims that Americans are at risk because the U.S. still lacks a plan and the window of opportunity is closing. President Trump's response: stepping aside. The prominent Republican senator relinquishes his role as the powerful chair of the Intel Committee. His cell phone seized by the FBI to investigate his stock trades related to the pandemic. Global hotspot. Could Brazil be the next epicenter? Their president's controversial response as the outbreak accelerates. And a guide to covering your face. Which mask is right for you?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. So much of this pandemic revolves around numbers, the number of cases, number of deaths, number of unemployed, and sometimes numbers fail to give perspective. So let's talk about that tonight. In the last 2 months, more than 36 million Americans have filed for unemployment. Picture that this way. That's like almost the entire population of Canada losing their job. And a reminder that America is the wealthiest nation on earth, and yet scenes like this one are becoming increasingly common. Lines of cars packed with families desperate for food. But in the midst of all the suffering, there is relief for some. Tonight, we want to share the story of one group that's already provided meals to hundreds of thousands and plans to feed many more. Will Carr starts us off.
In rural America, where you have to get old-fashioned directions after you pass Gun Barrel Lane. Hey, Julie, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. Families like Julie Estes Gibbs in Maybank, Texas, are struggling.
Life in general is crazy right now. We weren't able to get more than a gallon of milk at the grocery store, and that lasts about a day with this many kids. I go through 5 dozen eggs a week, so I resorted to getting my own chickens that are already laying, and the kids take care of those. That's a project for them. They really love it.
No! Julie is a school teacher with 6 kids, including 3 who she adopted. That's a lot of mouths to feed.
It is. I have 6 kids, and there's 5 growing boys, so they like to eat a lot. They put a lot of food away.
In Kennett, Missouri, Bobby Noblin's husband just got laid off. They have 3 boys.
Financially, it's such a strain to have everyone home at the same time.
And they're not alone. Today's unemployment numbers highlight what so many families already know. Millions of Americans are now suffering the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. Last week, just shy of 3 million people filed for unemployment, bringing the total number since the crisis began to 36.5 million Americans. By far, the biggest loss in American history. The economic catastrophe is so deep, Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell is warning Washington that if Congress and the White House don't provide more economic relief, the economy could be permanently damaged. While Washington debates how to move forward, a public and private initiative spearheaded by Baylor University in Texas and the USDA has ramped up an initiative called Meals to You, which started as a pre-COVID-19 program last year to help feed kids in rural America.
Hunger, even before this pandemic, we had 40 million Americans who are food insecure. And so hunger and poverty are too big for any one sector or any one organization to address by themselves.
After the crisis started, though, with the help of the Federal CARES Act, the program has scaled up exponentially.
We have 5 production lines back here with our employees, and each line can produce 800 meals in 5 minutes.
Inside this warehouse, you have stacks and stacks of food, including juice boxes, different types of cereals, and when you add it all up, you're talking about millions of meals going to families all across the country every week. How many meals can you put together a week right now?
We can put together 5 million meals a week.
That's a lot.
It is a lot. We do it across 3 different locations.
The food starts in this massive McLean Global warehouse in Houston, Texas.
Right now, the program is going to get about 500,000 children in it.
Each box, which is packed with 20 meals, is loaded onto UPS trucks, then shipped out to 38 states and Puerto Rico.
They send you milk that can last in the pantry rather than a refrigerator, which is kind of neat. I just want to thank these groups so much. It's such a blessing, not just for myself, but just knowing other kids are going to get food provided for them.
Hey.
No, there's supposed to just be one. Look.
You want them at the front door?
Sure, that'd be great.
We were there when Julie Estes Gibbs and her 6 kids back in Maybank, Texas, got their latest delivery.
We got some cereal.
We talk about when the boxes come, it's like Christmas morning because they're anxious to open them and sort them and see what they got.
What do you want to say to all the people who helped get you this food?
Thank you. And thank you for all your hard work and your dedication to kids that you don't even know.
Yeah, so many so grateful. And Will Carr joins us now from that warehouse. So how can people sign up for this, Will?
So that's a big question, Lindsay. Basically, if you live in a rural part of the country, all you have to do is contact your local school district, tell them that you want to apply for the Meals to You program. And at this point, this is in 38 states, like we mentioned, but they want to reach all 50 in the very near future.
And we can see people working, busy right behind you. What are they doing there to ensure safety?
Yeah, every person in this warehouse has to be temperature checked. They all have to be wearing their PPE, including us. This is really the new reality for so many companies across the country.
And before you go, Will, you were speaking to economists today. What are they telling you about overall about the types of jobs being lost across the country and how long this can last?
That's right. We know that 1 in 5 working Americans is now unemployed over the past 2 months. I mean, think about that. 1 in 5. So this is something that is reaching all across the country in all industries. It's hitting all communities, and economists are telling us that it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Right. People who have never lined up for food are doing so now. Will Carr, thank you so much for that. And while some thought closing America proved contentious, reopening it, well, that's becoming increasingly political. In Wisconsin, take a look at the scene after the state Supreme Court ruled to overturn the stay-at-home order there. People packed bars to celebrate. And today, President Trump went to Pennsylvania with a message for the governor to reopen. Our Alex Perez reports.
Tonight, President Trump touring a medical supply business in the battleground state of Pennsylvania.
Most of this equipment is made in the USA, and that's the way we like it.
Members of the White House staff wiping down handrails before the president arrived. Trump, who wasn't wearing a mask, surrounded by people who were, taking a shot at the state's Democratic governor.
We have to get your governor of Pennsylvania to start opening up a little bit. You have areas of Pennsylvania that are barely affected, and they want to keep them closed.
The president's visit coming as the CDC releases new guidelines, providing the most specific guidance yet on how to safely reopen while avoiding new outbreaks. The CDC recommending schools and camps stagger drop-offs and limit how often kids mix into groups. The guidance also says restaurants can reopen as long as they can answer yes to several questions, including encouraging social distancing and flexible leave among employees. People flocking to bars and restaurants in Wisconsin hours after the state Supreme Court struck down the governor's stay-at-home order, which the president called a win. The owner of the Brat Stop restaurant in Kenosha saying residents shouldn't be forced to stay home.
I also think that we should all be able to decide if we want to go out or not.
Tonight, Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers defeated, pleading for people to remain cautious.
But experience crowds or unsafe conditions that make you feel uncomfortable, you should go home. The virus hasn't changed, and neither has the science.
In Houston, this restaurant jam-packed with people 2 weeks after Texas allowed restaurants to reopen at 25% capacity. A scuffle breaking out on the steps of Michigan's Capitol today. Protesters, many blasting the governor's stay-at-home orders, some armed with guns.
She's the worst governor this state has ever had, and we need to get rid of her now.
At least 45 states already easing restrictions in some way, and in 4 of those states, the number of new cases is on the rise. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy tonight announcing Jersey Shore beaches will reopen in time for Memorial Day.
The Jersey Shore, after all, is where memories are made. The last thing any of us wanted was for a summertime down the shore to be a memory.
The governor also highlighting 108-year-old New Jersey resident Sylvia Goldsholl. She was just 7 years old when the Spanish flu killed millions, and she just beat COVID-19.
And Alex Perez joins us now from Wisconsin, where, as we mentioned, the issue of reopening has made its way to the state Supreme Court there. So, Alex, give us the latest on what's actually going to happen there now that the stay-at-home order has been officially knocked down.
Yeah, Lindsay, well, it's been officially knocked down, but things are not exactly as business as usual here right now. Several local counties and cities have enacted their own restrictions for residents and businesses here because they fear the virus could continue to spread. So the governor here going back to the table, now working with the legislature, trying to get a new statewide plan out very, very soon. So not exactly business as usual. A lot of those people who jumped yesterday to reopen now dealing with these new restrictions from their local authorities. Lindsay?
Okay, got to work on a plan B there. Okay, Alex, thanks so much for that report. And now to Washington, and a stark warning from a whistleblower, a top government scientist who was ousted from his position. He formerly led the government's efforts to develop a COVID-19 vaccine. Well, today, he unloaded on the Trump administration's coronavirus response. He testified on Capitol Hill that the window of opportunity is closing to prevent this pandemic from becoming far worse. President Trump calls him a disgruntled employee. ABC News senior congressional correspondent Mary Bruce has all the details.
Today, for the second time in a week, one of the nation's top health officials with a dire warning.
Without better planning, 2020 could be the darkest winter in modern history.
Dr. Rick Bright was leading the government's search for a vaccine, but says he was forced out of his job after raising concerns about the administration's response. Today, he came before Congress as a whistleblower.
What do you mean when you say 2020 will be the darkest winter in modern history?
The window is closing to address this pandemic because we still do not have a standard, centralized, coordinated plan to take our nation through this response. Time is running out because the virus is still spreading everywhere.
But Bright, whose life's work has been developing vaccines, threw cold water on any hope for a COVID vaccine anytime soon.
A lot of optimism is swirling around a 12 to 18 month time frame. If everything goes perfectly, we've never seen everything go perfectly.
And once a vaccine is approved, Bright warns of shortages.
We need to have a strategy and plan in place now to make sure that we can not only fill that vaccine, make it, distribute it, but administer it in a fair and equitable plan.
And that's not the case at this point.
We don't have that yet, and it is a significant concern.
Bright says early inaction by the government cost lives, especially those of healthcare workers. He described the moment he realized the federal response was falling short, detailing an email he got from a manufacturer saying their supply of N95 masks was decimated.
And he said, we're in deep, the world is, and we need to act. And I pushed that forward to the highest levels I could in HHS and got no response.
Bright says he urged the administration to focus on ramping up production and distribution of a possible treatment that was showing progress, the drug remdesivir.
I was told that my urgings were causing a commotion, and I was removed from those meetings.
Instead, Bright says he was directed to expand access to hydroxychloroquine, an anti-malaria drug promoted by President Trump.
What do you have to lose? I'll say it again. What do you have to lose? Take it. I think it could be a game changer.
But hydroxychloroquine is not approved to treat coronavirus, and at least one early study found a higher rate of death among patients who used the drug compared to those who received standard care. The FDA has warned it should not be used outside a hospital or clinical setting. But Republicans still pressed.
So was it because the president was encouraged by the use of this drug that you became discouraged by it?
It had nothing to do with politics, sir. I wanted to make sure that Americans were aware of the risk of this drug.
Today, as he left for Pennsylvania on his push to reopen the country, the president dismissed Bright's concerns.
I don't know him. I never met him. I don't want to meet him, but I watched him, and he looks like an angry, disgruntled employee who, frankly, according to some people, didn't do a very good job.
Bright now with this plea.
Americans deserve the truth. The truth must be based on science.
Later, lawmakers heard from that manufacturer who warned Bright about the lack of masks.
I'm a Republican. I voted for President Trump. I admire Dr. Bright. I don't know what he did in all of his other activities, but I think everything I've heard and every time I've talked to him and everything he said here made a lot of sense, and I believe him.
Mary Bruce joins us now. And Mary, we heard Dr. Bright's skepticism there about a vaccine by the end of the year. So what did he say is a realistic timeline as far as having one available to the public?
Yeah, and that is really the big X factor, the big unknown here going forward. When exactly will a vaccine be ready and able to be widely distributed? Now, we did hear from Dr. Anthony Fauci earlier in the week saying that he's hoping they'll know if any vaccine can be successful by late fall or early winter. Now, it normally takes up to 10 years to develop a new vaccine. So, Lindsay, they are moving very quickly here today. But Dr. Bright today really did throw some cold water on all of this by saying that 12 to 18-month timeline that we've been hearing so much about is an aggressive schedule, and he thinks it is going to take longer than that.
And also tomorrow, the House plans to vote on the next economic relief package from Democrats. What are the main components of the bill, and is there any chance at all that this moves forward, Mary?
This bill is nearly $3 trillion. The Democrats, from the House Democrats, it is largely an aspirational bill, though, because Republicans in the Senate have made very clear that it is already dead on arrival. It includes hundreds of billions of dollars in state and local aid, something that Senate Republicans have said they simply don't feel is necessary to pass right now. It also would include billions of more to help out small businesses who are in such dire need right now. But view this more as the Democrats' wish list. This is them putting down a marker, saying where they hope to start negotiations. But, Lindsay, this bill is not going anywhere over in the Senate. We are facing a very long battle on Capitol Hill over this next economic relief package.
Yeah, sounds that way. Okay, Mary Bruce, thanks so much. And now to a top Republican senator in the hot seat tonight. Richard Burr is stepping down as the chairman of the Intelligence Committee after coming under fire for stock trades that he made following briefings about the likely impacts of the coronavirus. ABC's Chief Justice correspondent Pierre Thomas has the latest details, including a new FBI warrant.
With the FBI intensifying its investigation into possible insider trading, Richard Burr today stepping aside as chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee.
This is a distraction to the hard work of the committee and the members, and I think the security of the country is too important.
Overnight, agents serving Burr with a warrant, then confiscating his cell phone from his Washington home.
It's part of the investigation, and everybody ought to let this investigation play out.
The FBI wants to know if Burr used intelligence information about the coronavirus for financial gain by selling stocks just before the market cratered. The senator selling up to $1.7 million in travel and hotel investments just a day after a closed-door briefing on the impact of the virus. Burr has denied any wrongdoing and insists he made those decisions based on public news reports.
The allegations are troubling.
But Burr is not the only senator facing scrutiny for stock market trades as the crisis unfolded. Dianne Feinstein today saying she answered questions from the FBI and turned over documents she says show she had no involvement in her husband's transactions.
Senator Loeffler, were you contacted by the FBI over your stock trades?
Senator Kelly Loeffler today not taking questions but again denying any improper trading after selling off stocks the same day she was briefed on the virus back in January. Loeffler, whose husband is the chair of the New York Stock Exchange, insisting their investments are handled by a third party. And she says she's not been served with any search warrant.
For more now, let's bring in Pierre Thomas. So, Pierre, I think we have to take a step back and understand first, what are the rules for stock trades by Congress members who learn confidential information on the job?
Well, in general, Lindsay, they're not supposed to use their information that they gain by working in Congress for financial gain. So that's the bottom line. You can't use your position to learn information and then use the stock market for financial gain.
And then Senator Loeffler, her position is that, look, my trades were handled by a third party. Does that make a difference?
Well, it could make a difference because if she's not involved, it's a third party involving it, and she had nothing to do with those trades. That could make a world of difference to the FBI.
All right, Pierre Thomas, thank you so much. Next tonight to the crisis in Brazil, another nation under the deadly grip of COVID-19. It appears to be getting much worse. But unlike so many other nations, Brazil is facing not only a health crisis, but one of leadership as well. Its far-right president has repeatedly downplayed the threat, pitting him against some governors and health professionals. And as Victor Kendo reports, this is happening as so many there suffer.
It started as a joyful occasion. Igor Vieira and 27 of his family members celebrating his mom's 59th birthday in Sao Paulo, Brazil. He didn't know it at the time, but that event would change his life.
We would never guessed what would happen. My mother started showing some symptoms, and then some 3 to 4 days later, my dad also started showing the symptoms, a bit of fever.
Igor ended up bringing his dad, Paulo, to the hospital. his father would never make it home.
I wanted to see him, to talk to him in person, to tell him that it was going to be okay, but I couldn't. I just couldn't. One day you're talking to him, and then he's there at the hospital, and then some days go by, you're just waiting to hear some good news, and then he's not here anymore. It's really difficult.
His aunt and uncles also succumbed to COVID-19, an entire family uprooted.
My uncles that are still alive, they lost 3 brothers in a row. It's a tragedy. It's a tragedy.
Across Brazil, loved ones are left mourning those lost. The country now has the 6th highest death rate in the world. Like other parts of Latin America, Brazil is facing medical shortages as the death toll there reaches more than 13,000.
Doctor, I think the big question here is Brazil the next epicenter of the coronavirus pandemic?
The number of cases that we have now and the inclination of the curve shows that we're just starting the epidemic here.
Brazil had its largest death spike this week and an infection rate that continues to climb. Yet its president, Jair Bolsonaro, has been dismissive of preventative measures to curb the spread.
E daí? Lamento, quer que faça o quê? Eu sou Messias, mas não faço milagre.
He fired his health minister last month and even joined quarantine protests back in April with hundreds in attendance, few wearing masks. Bolsonaro has been criticized for putting the economy above people's lives, declaring gyms and hair salons essential businesses.
Aquela história, então, de que a economia deixa para lá, primeiro vida, não é verdade.
But putting people back to work may not ease the economic hardship. According to the IMF, Brazil's economy is expected to shrink more than 5% this year. And for the country's hardest hit regions by COVID-19, it's very much a matter of life and death.
The virus in our state represents almost 40% of the coronavirus in Brazil.
The state of Sao Paulo has the highest rate of infections in the entire country. More than 51,000 people there have been infected. Sao Paulo's low-income neighborhoods, known as favelas, are breeding grounds for the virus. They are rampant, poor, and people live in close proximity.
Sometimes one family with 7 or 8 persons living in a very small house, that's almost impossible for them to establish social distancing. And that's one of the reasons that the virus spreads so quickly in these regions. The epidemic is spreading from big cities to the interior and from a high social class to the poorest people.
43-year-old Nilza Maria Ferreira was a housekeeper in an upper-class neighborhood, but since the pandemic hit, she's taken a job in a junkyard collecting scrap metal.
I leave my house because I have to, you understand, because I have my bills, my debts.
Food is also harder to come by, but the generosity of others is allowing her to put food on the table for her and her daughter.
Rice and beans, thank God I have it. Some people don't have it, so I can't complain about anything.
The virus is affecting the most vulnerable and isolated populations throughout the country. Manaus, located in Brazil's Amazon, has the deadliest outbreak per capita.
100 burials per day. We've noted a small drop, a fluctuation, but this number of deaths is extremely above normal, and we're calling for more restrictive measures so that people understand that their lives depend on staying home.
And its indigenous population is at especially high risk.
Nobody came to help the community in the time we needed it the most. Almost the entire community fell sick with symptoms similar to COVID-19. I can't tell you what the disease was, but it happened at a time when we didn't expect it.
Doctors, hospitals, medical equipment lacks in this remote region, and people are left with no choice but to prepare for the worst. Victor Oquendo, ABC News, Miami.
Our thanks to Victor for that. And some good news in the fight against COVID-19. A new study found that blood plasma transfusions appear to be safe when treating people with coronavirus. Now, this certainly isn't a cure. It just means that scientists can expand studies and trials of this type of plasma treatment now that it appears to be safe. The hope is that it ends up being an effective way to treat people with COVID-19, but at the very least, it gives doctors one more way to treat the virus until a vaccine is developed. And when we come back, the coup that wasn't, the story behind that botched raid on Venezuela and why it came as such a shock to the families of those Americans involved. Plus, up in flames, massive wildfires breaking out across South Florida, and more developments in the case of Ahmaud Arbery. What a newly released 911 call may be able to tell us about how this all started. Stay with us.
Most powerful stories of our time, anytime. Nightline.
Your mom said, comb your hair. Your dad told you, smarten up. Your dog is judging you right now. And your best friend just called you crazy. We all need someone who'll pull no punches and give it to us straight. Now imagine getting your news like that. No bull, no spin, just give it to me straight. Straightforward news. Straight to the heart of the story. ABC News, straightforward.
The Americans here on the ground and the Iraqis. 18,000 tons. Patatas. Ismail? David.
Over ground zero from Hurricane Michael.
You can see just home after home.
David,
nice to meet you. This was your view.
My favorite view.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Good morning, sunshine.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm grateful you woke up this morning.
Good morning, sunshine.
Good morning, sunshine. We've been waiting for you. Say good morning. Good morning, sunshine. America. Say good morning. I want you to wake me up.
Right now, how do you make sense of it all? Now, afternoons on ABC, one place with the good information you need.
We are all in this together, and we're going to get through this together.
Pandemic, what you need to know. Afternoons at 1 Eastern, 12 Central and Pacific on ABC.
Take a look at these incredible images out of Florida. As you can see, massive wildfires spread across a good portion of South Florida last night into today, burning about 400 acres and shutting down a section of the I-75 highway. Police said that there are currently no evacuation orders in place, but residents should pay very close attention in the event that conditions change. And tonight we're learning more details about the deadly shooting of Ahmaud Arbery, that killing caught on tape, a new 911 recording, and why the suspect's attorney says we need to hear all the facts. ABC's Steve Osunsami has more.
State investigators who've taken over this case after local authorities were accused of looking the other way are listening closely tonight to a newly released 911 call made by one of the accused killers nearly 2 weeks before what happened here, where he and his father, a former police officer, are accused of murdering this unarmed young black man.
What's your name and phone number, sir?
Travis McMichael.
Police say that on February 11th, Travis McMichael was driving past a house under construction a few doors down from his home when he saw someone inside with a flashlight who he felt looked suspicious.
And I had a pistol stolen January 1st, actually. And, you know, I've never seen this guy before in the neighborhood.
These security camera videos from inside that construction site do show a young black man repeatedly visiting and walking around. And in this one, from the day of the shooting, the family of Ahmaud Arbery confirms that this is him. But in every recording, he's seen walking away empty-handed, and the owners reported no thefts and say they would never have sought a vigilante response. New lawyers for Travis McMichael say there's more to the story.
Let the facts develop, let the case play out where it should play out, which is, I think we can all agree, in court.
William Roddy Bryan, the neighbor who recorded the video, says he's cooperating with authorities. A detail in the police report may explain why he was there. The McMichaels told investigators that Brian was helping them stop the young man and that Roddy attempted to block him, which was unsuccessful.
And let's bring in Steve Osunsami now. Steve, we've also learned that suspected killer Gregory McMichael's law enforcement license was actually suspended back in February 2019. What do we know about that?
Well, we know that he had failed to get some sort of law enforcement training, and because he didn't do that, his right to arrest was taken away, and that he retired. He then retired just a few months after that in the summer of 19, and this, of course, happened in February of this year.
And we still don't know exactly why the neighbor, William Roddy Bryan, the man who filmed the killing, was even there at the scene.
Well, it's not clear. He has not really fully explained this, but in the police report, we get a clue. In the police report, the McMichaels told investigators that William Roddy Bryan was helping them stop this young man, but was unsuccessful. That when this young man turned around and ran towards Bryan, he was able to get past him. Bryan, though, is doing everything he can to cooperate investigators to, frankly, avoid arrest. His attorney has even called him a witness. Might as well put the word state in front of it, which is what they hope. They're trying everything to be cooperative with investigators to avoid an arrest. Authorities, though, say it is still possible they could make more arrests in this case, and that this investigation is still very active.
Yeah, so
Lindsay.
He's maintaining that he is a witness and not a suspect. All right, Steve Osunsami, thanks so much. And now to another shooting death that's sparking an outcry. 26-year-old EMT and aspiring nurse Breonna Taylor was fatally shot 8 times by Louisville, Kentucky police officers who entered her home in the early morning hours as part of a narcotics investigation. In March, the police were entering on a so-called no-knock warrant when authorities say Breonna's boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, fired his gun allegedly because he thought the officers were intruders. The police fired back, killing Breonna. Her mother has sued 3 police officers and hired civil rights attorney Ben Crump, who appeared today on ABC's The View.
So Breonna and Kenny are sleeping in their bed at around 1 in the morning on a Thursday night, and they hear something. They call 911. That tells you their mentality is they believe they're about to be the subject of a home invasion. And so Kenny, who is a registered gun owner, gets his gun, and they go towards the living room area, and when they breach the door with a battering ram and bust it open, Kenny shoots at the door. And then the police just open up 25, 30 rounds from the front door, from the window, from outside the back patio door. They're shooting blindly.
Now, according to a warrant, Breonna was suspected of accepting packages for an ex-boyfriend who police were investigating for alleged drug trafficking. The police department said the officers did knock before entering.
They had the primary suspect of this search warrant in their custody. If they just would have checked, they would have said they had no need to use a battering ram and do this dangerous no-knock search warrant.
Breonna's mother, Tamika Palmer, says she was given the runaround when she initially tried to find out what happened to her daughter.
It's been 2 months since Breonna was killed, and you say no one from the police department has reached out to you or anyone else in the family? What did they tell you happened?
They didn't give me any answers.
Kenneth Walker, Breonna's boyfriend, has been charged with attempted murder for firing at the officers, to which he has pleaded not guilty. The officers have not been charged, but were put on administrative reassignment pending an investigation, and the Louisville Metro Police Department declined to comment because of the ongoing internal investigation. Today, the Louisville mayor and police chief said that they want the FBI and U.S. attorney to review the findings of that investigation once it's complete. And still ahead on ABC News Prime, reinstated the sergeant who was originally fired for sitting in his car and failing to react while a gunman murdered students inside Parkland. He's going to get his job back. We'll explain the rationale. And while the job market is disastrous right now, there are still companies hiring a lot of people. We'll explain. But first, our tweet of the day. We don't want to let it go.
Let it go. Can't hold it back anymore. Let it go. Let it go.
In In times like these, the news-making events happen here. ABC News.
President Trump meeting face-to-face with one of the world's most brutal dictators, Kim Jong-un.
The president.
You trust him? I do trust him, yeah. I think he trusts me, and I trust him.
Ivanka Trump.
I have to ask you about your emails. Your father had taken Hillary Clinton to task for this.
There just is no equivalency.
So the idea of lock her up doesn't apply to you?
No.
Comey.
How strange is it for you to sit here and compare the president to a mob boss?
Very strange. Michelle Obama.
What do you wish you could tell your pre-White House self?
Whew.
Melania Trump.
Do you think there's still people there that he can't trust?
Yes.
Still working now?
Yes.
Michael Cohen.
So he's still lying?
Yes.
It's a big statement.
And now, in a year with so much on the line, we're right there.
Good evening tonight from Washington, a very busy news night.
America's #1 news source, ABC News, straightforward.
We all need someone who'll pull no punches and give it to us straight. No bull, no spin. Now imagine getting your news like that. Just give it to me straight. ABC News, straightforward.
Another week in America, a country facing a new test now.
The Wuhan airport, almost no one here.
The last flight out of Rome.
This is the nursing home just outside Seattle.
Dozens of people were just rushed off this cruise ship.
This is ground zero.
It is shut down.
Another ambulance just pulled out.
Now they're headed to the hospital.
Time is of the essence.
You can see the ship behind me.
This is the first time tests have been done here.
Morning, afternoon, evening, late night, 24/7. ABC News, there for you.
What's the most innovative daily news podcast out there to listen to every day? Well, the Edward R. Murrow Awards say it's Start Here, the daily news podcast from ABC News. Even the New York Times calls us a top news podcast worth listening to. Start Here, free on Apple Podcasts.
Welcome back. Another tough report on unemployment claims today. But two companies, they have some good news to share on the jobs front this week. Let's take a look by the numbers. Today, Kroger announced it has hired more than 100,000 new workers across its grocery stores, manufacturing facilities, and distribution centers during the pandemic. That's a 20% increase in their workforce in just the last 8 weeks, with some of those workers coming from restaurants and hotels that have had to let employees go. That workforce boost comes as consumer spending at supermarkets is up 25% from last year, according to an industry analyst report. Kroger says they've spent $700 million just since March on extra pay for associates and for additional safety efforts in their stores, including making free COVID-19 testing available for their employees who need it. Walmart is also investing more, announcing this week it'll pay an additional $390 million in employee bonuses in late June, with $300 for each full-time hourly associate and $150 for part-time or temporary associates. That comes on top of $550 million in bonuses already paid out during the pandemic. The retail giant has also been on a hiring spree, with 150,000 new employees brought on board since March, and they plan to bring on 50,000 more. And we still have a lot of news to get to tonight. The terrifying scene, skydivers plummeting toward the earth. What went wrong? Plus, the botched mission that was over before it began, leaving 2 Americans in a Venezuelan jail accused of plotting a coup. This is a bizarre case. Tonight, we're going to hear from some of their relatives desperate for them to be freed. And how do you know if you're wearing the mask the right way? We're going to show you how. But first, here's some of the trending stories on abcnews.com.
Seeing right now, this is part of the eye wall. This procession of migrants goes back 2 miles.
There is going to be catastrophic damage.
This fire has made a run. You can see those flames shooting up into the sky.
We are on the jam-packed red carpet.
To the right, guys.
So this is the 4th weekend of protests.
Watch ABC News on location for Facebook Watch.
What's the most innovative daily news podcast out there to listen to every day? Well, the Edward R. Murrow Awards say it's Start Here, the daily news podcast from ABC News. Even the New York Times calls us a top news podcast worth listening to. So if you like getting behind the biggest news stories of the day, inside all the details, the backstory, and what will happen next, then listen to Start Here, the daily news podcast from ABC News. It's like no other news podcast out there. Even the critics agree. Listen free on Apple Podcasts.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live, the 24/7 streaming news source from ABC News. Breaking news, live events, streaming nonstop. Original breakthrough storytelling from ABC News, National Geographic, ESPN, and it's all designed differently for you to stream straight to any screen whenever you want.
ABC News Live.
Streaming everywhere, right to you.
ABC News Live. It's that easy to go there.
The Americans here on the ground and the Iraqis, 18,000 tons. Patatas. Ismail? David.
Over ground zero from Hurricane Michael.
You can see just home after home.
David, nice to meet you.
This was your view.
My favorite view.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The famed Jersey Shore will be opening up for Memorial Day weekend. Governor Phil Murphy says no mass gatherings will be allowed and social distancing measures will be in place. He says residents are working hard and deserve a day at the beach if they can do so safely. In Wisconsin, the president is cheering the state's highest court after it tossed out the governor's stay-at-home order. The judge ruled the governor overstepped when extending the order another month without consulting legislators.
Hard-hit New York will usher in phase one of the state's reopening plan tomorrow. Governor Andrew Cuomo said the number of hospitalizations, new cases, and deaths are all headed in the right direction.
Another 2.9 million Americans filed for unemployment benefits last week. More than 36 million have filed jobless claims since the outbreak. The government doctor who once oversaw the creation of a vaccine for coronavirus and was removed from his post at the National Institutes of Health testifying on Capitol Hill.
If we fail to improve our response now, based on science, I fear the pandemic will get worse and be prolonged.
Dr. Rick Bright filed a whistleblower complaint following his removal for what he says was sounding the alarm that the U.S. was not prepared or doing enough in the earliest days in battling the virus.
I don't know him. I never met him. I don't want to meet him. But I watched him, and he looks like an angry, disgruntled employee who, frankly, according to some people, didn't do a very good job.
Senator Richard Burr is leaving his post as chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee as the FBI investigates his stock trading.
This is a distraction to the hard work of the committee and the members, and I think the security of the country is too important.
He is under investigation for whether he used insider information to sell off up to $1.7 million in stocks before the markets began to tumble amid the coronavirus pandemic. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said in a statement that he and Burr agreed it would be in the best interest of the committee for him to step down for the time being. The decision comes after federal agents seized Burr's cell phone as part of the ongoing investigation.
Feeling like $1 trillion? The world's richest man could soon become the first ever trillionaire. According to one industry estimate, Amazon founder Jeff Bezos could reach that milestone by 2026. Despite an economy-crippling pandemic, Amazon is one of the few companies to see its share soar, while also facing criticism and protests from workers for its safety practices. Bezos is currently worth $143 billion, so $1 trillion may seem a long way off. But consider this, his net worth grew 34% over the past 5 years.
Now to a story that seems like it was ripped right from the pages of a spy novel, but it's playing out in real life. After an ex-Green Beret led a failed attempt to start an uprising against Venezuela's leader, Nicolas Maduro, the botched raid on Venezuela's shores has left 2 former U.S. service members captured there. And their families are now looking for answers on how their loved ones got involved. ABC News Chief Global Affairs correspondent Martha Raddatz has this story.
Operation Gideon, as this botched mission was dubbed, was over before the two boats even hit Venezuela's shores. Officials there saying 6 were killed by the Venezuelan military and more than a dozen men rounded up and detained, including these 2 Americans working for a private security firm, Luke Denman and Arbery, both former Special Forces soldiers. Barry's wife of 19 years and mother to his 2 children had no idea he was anywhere near Venezuela. Melanie, you must have been shocked when you found out.
Yeah.
You didn't know he was in Venezuela. You didn't know what he was doing. And how did you find out?
Through online reports. I mean, and then I couldn't believe it. I was in total shock, and it's just like, your heart stops, and it's like the world stands still, and you don't know what's going on. It was just really, terrifying.
Luke Denman's girlfriend, Tatiana Sumiko Sato, was in the dark as well, with a lot of questions.
Yeah.
What's the first question you'd ask him?
What the hell? I don't know. I don't know. I can't answer that. I don't know. I just want to hug him and just hold him is kind of where I'm at. I don't even know if I want to talk. I just want to see him and hold him and never let him go.
But just about the same time Denman and Barry were being captured, the man behind Operation Gideon, Jordan Goudreau, was boasting on Twitter of the mission's success.
At 1700 hours, a daring amphibious raid was launched from the border of Colombia deep into the heart of Caracas. Our men are continuing to fight right now. Our units have been activated in the south, west, and east of Venezuela. Commander Nieto is with me, is co-located, and Commander Sakay is on the ground now fighting.
Goudreau, who also served in the Army with Denman and Barry, runs a private security firm in Florida, Silver Corps. His promotional video showing him during his Green Beret days and providing security at a Trump rally. Later, telling a Venezuelan news outlet he had been training for this invasion for a year.
Are you familiar with Alexander the Great, the Battle of Gaugamela? He struck deep into the heart of the enemy, and that's how he won.
In scripted and heavily edited videos released by the Venezuelans of the captured Americans, Denman, likely under duress, says that Donald Trump was behind the invasion. But despite Trump's diplomatic efforts to oust Venezuela's corrupt President Nicolas Maduro, the administration has made clear that Jordan Goudreau and his men were not working for the U.S. government.
There was no U.S. government direct involvement in this operation.
Former Navy SEAL Ephraim Matos agrees. He says he was initially going to provide training for the mission, but then bailed out.
Pretty much within the first 5 minutes of looking at all of the stuff that they were telling me, especially when I looked into the Silver Corp, I was like, no, this is not legit. This is not backed by the U.S. government.
Matos said the men working for Jordan Goudreau were likely convinced it was a U.S.-sanctioned operation. Luke Denman's parents say they think it was sanctioned by the Venezuelan opposition leader Juan Guaido. He's denied any involvement, but 2 of his senior aides resigned this week after admitting they had once met with Jordan Goudreau.
I believe Luke was doing something that he believed in, and he wanted to help people. I'm still out, like I said, on just exactly what part he had in this.
He thought he was helping the Venezuelan people because that's what he does. When he was a Green Beret, he was a hostage rescue person.
Now, it is Denman and Barry who need rescuing.
They're both just wonderful people, and they just need to come home.
And while State Department officials say they did not sanction this invasion, they say they will do everything they can to get the men back. For ABC News Live, I'm Martha Raddatz in Washington.
Our thanks to Martha for that. One of the officers who was fired over his handling of the shooting at that high school in Parkland, Florida, he's getting his job back. Sergeant Brian Miller was one of 4 officers fired last year after an investigation found they neglected their duties when they responded to the shooting at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School that left 17 people dead. The probe found that Miller, who was the first supervising officer on the scene, hid behind his car during the shooting, but the police union ruled that Miller was denied due process and improperly terminated. So now he'll get full back pay and seniority when he goes back to work. The sheriff's office blasted the decision, saying it was wrongly decided and based on a technicality. Tens of thousands of people are under very tight restrictive orders. They've been forced to evacuate as a powerful typhoon makes landfall in the Philippines. Wind gusts measured at the center of the storm match what would be considered a Category 2 hurricane here in the U.S. It's unclear of the extent of the damage, but as of now, the storm is expected to weaken in the next hours as it turns north over land. Typhoon Vangfang is the first named storm of the season in the western Pacific. Meanwhile, in some preseason activity in the Atlantic, a disturbance has a 70% chance of developing into a tropical or subtropical depression by the weekend. If it does develop into a storm, it would be named Arthur. Hurricane season starts June 1st. Now to this season's must-have when it comes to fashion and public safety. We're talking, of course, about face masks. But which one is the right one for you? Because as our Becky Worley reports, there are a number of things to consider when it comes to covering our faces.
The surgical pleat, the adjustable, even the mask accessory. But
that's not always one size fits all.
Look online and you'll see Instagram and Etsy overflowing with them. Big name fashion brands customizing them.
They fit most size adults, small, medium, large, extra large. It helps with the adjustable straps.
And many touting the comfort and efficacy of masks for sale. The CDC advising all masks should allow for breathing without restriction, fit snugly but comfortably, and include multiple layers of fabric, which can help prevent the spread of the virus.
Tightly woven cotton cloth, something approximating the weave of a bandana. Certainly not a looser weave, like the kind of material or knit that a sweater is made out of. The holes in that type of material are much too large.
But anything too thick can restrict breathing. So the sweet spot is actually to find one that's comfortable and breathable enough that you're not taking it on and off and touching your face. Soft ear loops or adjustable bands can make a big difference. Many come with bendable wire over the nose bridge.
Some of the best things that you can do are to make sure that the mask fits closely on your face. If the mask is fitting improperly, air is actually being funneled downward and inward on the sides of the mask directly into the nostrils and into the nasal passages. And that's exactly what we don't want.
Now for some mask don'ts. Noble says don't go more than a day or two without cleaning it. The washing machine and a thorough dry are key. And while you might opt for something cute like sequins or glitter, our expert doesn't recommend those, as they can make fabric more porous, can harbor bacteria more than cloth, and be itchy, so we touch our face more.
Our thanks to Becky Worley for that. The remarkable and miraculous comeback of NASCAR racer Ryan Newman continues. You may recall his horrific crash during the Daytona 500 back in February. Many feared the worst, but days later, he walked out of the hospital holding his daughter's hands. And on the heels of his return to racing today for the first time, he addressed that frightening accident.
I don't remember anything about being in the hospital. I couldn't tell you who came to visit me. I couldn't tell you who was in the room. But I do remember putting my arms around my daughter's chest and walking out and holding their hands as I did that. And that tells me that God was involved. That tells me that I was blessed in more ways than one, and makes me so thankful for what I went through and being able to, have the people around me that I love and trust afterwards. So I don't even know how to describe it more than that. It's just, I feel like a complete walking miracle.
Blessed and back out on the racetrack. And when we come back, the story of a 6-year-old entrepreneur who is cheering up his community one ice cream cone at a time. Stay with us.
Right now,
How do you make sense of it all? Now, afternoons on ABC, one place with the good information you need.
We are all in this together, and we're going to get through this together.
Pandemic, what you need to know. Afternoons at 1 Eastern, 12 Central and Pacific on ABC. Friday nights, 9, 8 Central. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues. The Hunt. True Crime 2020. Friday nights, 9, 8 Central on ABC.
The world may feel out of your control, but your happiness doesn't have to be. Learn the secrets to happiness. Listen to the 10% Happier podcast, free on Apple Podcasts.
ABC News honored winner of 4 Edward R. Murrow Awards, including the most prestigious honor, Overall Excellence in Television. ABC News, America's #1 news choice.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live, the 24/7 streaming news source from ABC News. Breaking news, live events, streaming nonstop. Original breakthrough storytelling from ABC News, National Geographic, ESPN, and it's all designed differently for you to stream straight to any screen whenever you want.
ABC News Live.
Streaming everywhere, right to you. ABC News Live. It's that easy to go there.
Good morning, sunshine.
Good morning. Good morning. Oh, I'm grateful you woke up this morning.
Good morning, sunshine.
Good morning, sunshine. We've been waiting for you. Say good morning. Good morning, sunshine. In America. Say good morning. I want you to wake me up.
ABC News, America's #1 news source. Straightforward news, straight to the heart of the story. ABC News, straightforward.
Oh my God.
Oh, just some absolutely terrifying moments for these tandem skydivers in Central Florida after an apparent malfunction with their parachute sent them spiraling out of control toward the ground. They ended up crash landing into a tree in the front yard of a house. Their jump had started 10,000 feet in the air. Thankfully, both survived, but did sustain serious injuries. Finally, tonight, we all scream for ice cream, and there is a 6-year-old little boy spreading joy in his community, one scoop at a time. James Longman has our feel-good news roundup.
Hi guys, coronavirus has been with us for a while now, but people are still spreading love and joy and cheer in all kinds of different ways. Like, for example, Clark and his mum, Kelly. The 6-year-old came up with the idea to start an ice cream truck. A small gesture, but it's gone a long way.
I wanted ice cream to give ice cream around to people because I thought that was pretty nice.
A nice thing to do, right? And what was the reaction that people had when you gave them the ice cream?
Happy. That made them happy.
Sweet. And how did you give it to them? Because I know you've got to keep your distance, right? How did you manage to do it? Like physically give them the ice cream?
We put ice cream down the tube. We put ice cream down the tube. We put an ice cream sign on so they can pick with their fingers. Then we just get out of the cores, then we can put it down the tube.
We live in a very heavy medical town, and so there are tons of medical professionals in our neighborhood. And so, one, to be able to give back to them, kind of bring a smile to their children's face, while also, I think it's fun for the kids, but I would wager it's almost even better for the adults because it brings back memories from their childhood, and they're watching their child enjoy something during a time that's tough.
And they've been thinking about different ways that they could use their truck.
After the ice cream truck, what are we going to do? What's our next idea?
We should do a beer truck.
No, not a beer truck.
You should do a beer truck. That's right.
Thank you so much, Kelly and Clark, for speaking to us and showing us just how important it is to help our communities during this time. So next up, we want to take you over to Ireland and superstar Matt Damon, who's been hiding out in a leafy suburb of Dublin. He was meant to shoot a movie there, but he ended up staying there with his family. The whole of Ireland wanted to get hold of an exclusive with him. The people there took him under his wing, protected him from the media, But two plucky DJs from a Dublin radio station managed to get that exclusive, and I caught up with them.
You must have been pretty excited.
He is the nicest man in the world, James. You wouldn't believe. He ended up saying at the end of the interview, Graham, Nathan, when this all blows over, we might go for beers afterwards. Now, I don't know if that will happen, but even saying that is pretty cool.
The Irish are clearly fans of the actor, and he decided to repay their kindness, surprising a frontline nurse.
Oh, my God! Hey, Anais, how you doing? Thank you so much for what you're doing, Anais. I can't even tell you. I mean, this has been so horrible for everybody, but if there's any silver lining, it's that hopefully people are finally understanding how awesome you frontline workers are.
That looked like it really meant a lot to her. Now, check this out. Who doesn't love receiving a beautiful bunch of flowers? Well, family-owned greenhouse Green Circle Growers in Ohio surprised frontline workers in 7 of the hardest-hit states with orchids.
We said, what if we could donate close to $1 million worth of orchids to all the hardest hit areas across the nation, right into the hands of care workers that are on the front lines of this crisis in hospitals.
So we want to bring them, just let them know that they are valued and they're loved and they're appreciated for what they're doing.
In all, they distributed 1 million flowers, and they're calling this initiative Flowers for the Front Lines. That's it for tonight. Stay safe, everyone, and be good to each other.
Thank you, James. I'm still thinking about the 6-year-old who goes from the ice cream truck to the beer truck. But before we go tonight, our image of the day, man's best friend as man's best helper this Mental Health Awareness Month. Here's Harley the pug, all decked out in PPE for his very important work as a therapy dog at the National Medical Center in Mexico City. He provides emotional support to doctors and nurses treating COVID-19 patients. A very good boy playing his part on the front lines of this pandemic. That is our show for this hour. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us, and have a great night.
What